Welcome to the second and last part of our journey down a centenary of proud South African tennis history. The 60s was a very special period for tennis in our country. There were many highlights and unforgettable memories, from the glamour of our beautiful twins, Reynolds and Schuurman, to the power of our conquering pair, Hewitt and McMillan. There were also many new experiences. World stars came to play in South Africa. The boycotts started and were followed by many anti-South African campaigns. Men's tennis of the early 60s was very much dominated by Gordon Forbes and Abe Siegel. They won the South African doubles championship 4 times in 5 years, between 1959 and 1964. Forbes won the South African singles title in 59 and 61 and was a 3 times finalist. He also represented South Africa in 31 Davis Cup matches. As for Abe Siegel, he won the South African singles title in 1964 and went on to represent South Africa in 37 Davis Cup matches, the second most Davis Cup caps by a South African. In 1962, they beat Switzerland, France and Germany, but lost the zone semi-final to Sweden. It was at this time that Cliff Drysdale appeared on the scene. In a heroic performance in Paris, playing with severe cramp, he beat his French opponent. In the late 50s and early 60s, 2 beautiful girls brought glamour and glory to South African tennis. Sandra Reynolds and Renee Schuurman, our tennis twins, graced courts worldwide. Sandra Reynolds was perhaps the better singles player of the two, winning the South African singles championships in 1959 and 61. Together, they won the national doubles title 3 times in 1958, 60 and 61. At Wimbledon the following year, 1960, they provided great suspense for South Africa. For the first time in history, there were 2 South African ladies in the semi-finals, and there was every possibility of an all-South African final. Schuurman lost, but the 8th-seeded Reynolds became the first South African woman to make it to the final. The lovely Bloemfontein girl started well, and her fans all over the country hoped. Eventually, she lost 8-6, 6-love to the defending champion, Maria Bueno of Brazil.
The people at home were wonderful. They sent us telegrams and we got telephone calls, and their support was amazing.
A year later, 1961, Reynolds was seeded first, the first and only time a South African was honored in this way at Wimbledon. However, she was beaten in the semi-finals by Angela Mortimer, the eventual winner.
Sandra that year was seeded #1 at Wimbledon, and there was no question that she was the best player that year, and everybody felt that she deserved that title.
1964 was a memorable year for South African tennis in more ways than one. It was the first time that a South African was exposed to anti-apartheid actions. Newly elected Springbok Keith Diepram played his first Davis Cup match in Oslo against Norway, and what a debut it was. Demonstrators forced their way onto the court, and the South African was obliged to complete his match on a private court. A year later, in 1965, South Africans began to make their presence felt in the competition. A team made up of Drysdale, Keith Diepram and Abe Siegel, 1 match, beat Holland, Norway, Great Britain and France to win the zone semi-final. It was the first time ever that South Africa reached a zone final. But they lost 4-1 to Spain in Barcelona. In 1967, Australia provided a big boost for South Africa when Bob Hewitt, 2 times Wimbledon doubles champion at the time, was allowed to play for South Africa. The fiery Aussie came to South Africa to marry his love, the beautiful model Delaile. That year, South Africa beat Holland, Monaco and France to reach the group final. The clash took place at Westbridge Park, Durban, the first ever Davis Cup match to be played in South Africa. South Africa defeated Brazil 5-0, and in the interzone semi-final in Barcelona, South Africa beat India 5-0. Tragedy struck when Bob Hewitt injured his ankle in the doubles, putting him out of action for the interzone final. The interzone final was the first Davis Cup match played at Ellis Park. South Africa faced Spain, and tennis fever ran high, with thousands of fans queuing up for hours to see the encounter. In the first match, world star Manuel Santana beat the young Ray Moore. The second match victory went to Cliff Drysdale when he beat Manuel Orantes. In the doubles, Drysdale and McMillan were beaten by Santana and Arilla, with Hewitt sadly missed. The fourth match saw victory for South Africa when Moore beat Orantes with excellent play. The tie was levelled at 2-all, and the tension was mounting. In the final match, Drysdale faces Santana, but rain stops play as Santana leads 2-1. The match continues on the fourth day, but in a terrible anticlimax is over in just 23 minutes as Santana wins the fourth set 6-2, putting Spain through to the final. Intussen is daar 'n kompetisie vir dames in die lewe geroep. Die Federasiebeker is die eerste keer in 1963 by Queen's Club in Londen gespeel. 16 lande het deelgeneem en Suid-Afrika het dadelik beïndruk. Ons span met Reynolds and Schuurman, Margaret Hunt, Annette van Zyl en Heather Siegel dring deur tot die halfeindronde, maar verloor 3-0 teen Australië. Annette van Zyl was tot 1968 een van die groot staatmakers van die Springbokke. Sy was ook die jongste Suid-Afrikaanse enkelspelkampioen op 17 jaar en 7 maande. Dit was in 1963 toe sy Margaret Hunt met 6-4, 6-2 op Ellis Park geklop het. Die vorige jaar, in 1962, het Annette haar eerste Suid-Afrikaanse open dubbelspeltitel ingepalm. In 1966 het sy en vrou McMillan die gemengde dubbelspelle die Franse Open gewen. In die 70er jare sorg Annette vir 'n opspraakwekkende terugkeer na 'n paar jaar in tennisafsondering. Sedert haar oorwinning in 1963 het oorseese spelers geseëvier by die SA Open. Met haar terugkeer in 1975 het Annette weer Suid-Afrika se eerste enkelspelkampioen in 12 jaar geword. Van die middel 60s af het die meeste Wimbledon kampioene en wêreldsterre aan die SA Open deelgeneem en die toernooi oorheers. Baie van hulle het as Wimbledon kampioene gewen op Ellis Park of voortgegaan om Wimbledon te wen. In 1967 wen Manuel Santana die mans enkelspeltitel en Billie Jean verslaan Maria Bueno, Wimbledon kampioen in 59 en 64, in die eindstryd van die vroue enkelspel. Die volgende jaar loop Tom Okker, een van Nederland se beste spelers, so ver en die Australiër Margaret Court met die lauwere weg. In 1969 wen Rod Laver van Australië die Suid-Afrikaanse titel en gaan hy voort om Wimbledon te wen en die Grand Slam daardie jaar te voltooi. Billie Jean King word ook die derde agtereenvolgende jaar die Suid-Afrikaanse vroue kampioen. Rod Laver verdedig in 1970 sy Suid-Afrikaanse titel suksesvol teen McMillan en Margaret Court van Australië neem die vroue titel by Billie Jean King af en behaal ook dieselfde jaar die Grand Slam. In 1971 wen nog 'n Australiër, Ken Rosewall, die Suid-Afrikaanse Open. Hy is beskou as moontlik die ongelukkigste speler wat nie Wimbledon kon wen nie. Margaret Court wen haar derde Suid-Afrikaanse Open enkelspeltitel in 1971. In 1972 wen die stewige Amerikaner Cliff Ritchie die mans enkelspel en die aantreklike Australiër Yvonne Goolagong die vroue titel. Sy was ook die 1971 Wimbledon se kampioen. 1973 word gekenmerk deur die verskyning van Jimmy Connors. Nadat Arthur Ashe se inskrywing die kleurskeidslyn te bowe gekom het, verloor hy die eindstryd teen Connors. Chris Evert van Amerika wen die jaar die Suid-Afrikaanse vroue titel. In 1974 wen Jimmy Connors weer die mans enkelspel op Ellis Park En ook die Wimbledonse kampioenskap en Kerry Melville van Australië buit ons vrouwentitel. Connors en Chris Evert raak in Johannesburg verloof. Dit was 'n groot geleentheid toe Suid-Afrika in 1972 as gasheer van die Federasiebeker-toernooi optree. 16 lande het deelgeneem en 'n kleurvolle, feestelike atmosfeer het op Ellis Park geheers.
So groot hoogtepunt, Steve, was dit vir my as 'n kommentator dat ek die telling van die tennis totaal en al vergeet het. Ek onthou 72, dis baie jare gelede. Brenda Kirk, Pat Pretorius en Greta Delport het Suid-Afrika verteenwoordig en in die Britse span was dit Joyce Williams, dit was Winnie Shaw en Virginia Wade.
In die eerste wedstryd klop Virginia Wade Pat Pretorius, maar Brenda Kirk verslaan Winnie Shaw in die tweede kragmeting. Die finale dubbelspelwedstryd sou die uitslag bepaal en die spanning was oorweldigend. Pretorius en Kirk kom te staan teen Wade en Joyce Williams.
Ek onthou dat Johannes van der Walt en ek die bal vir balkommentaar daai jare gedoen het. En die spanning het natuurlik opgeloop na 'n ongelooflike hoogtepunt. 'n Mens het geweet daar gaan na die een of die ander kant gaan daar 'n ontploffing plaasvind. En in die laaste stel onthou ek het Johannes twee potte uitgesaai. En dan met die ruiling het ons kommentaarbeurte geruil en dan het ek weer 2 potte uitgesaai. En die 2 potte van Johannes het hy as verloorpotte uitgesaai en die 2 potte wat ek kon uitsaai was toevallig wenpotte. En ek het naderhand 'n beroep gedoen op die luisteraars in Suid-Afrika waar hulle ook hulle motors ry, waar hulle by die huis sit om duim vas te hou. Want hier is Suid-Afrika op die drempel van 'n ongelooflike deurbraak en 'n oorwinning. En ek glo tog dat daar een of ander, noem dit sielkunde, by betrokke was. Gert Potgieter vertel die pragtige storie, hy het iewers in die Karoo gery en na hierdie kommentaar geluister en toe op 'n bultjie, omdat die ontvangs maar baie swak was, het hy gaan stilhou en hy het gewag tot aan die einde van die wedstryd en hy het gehoor wat daar gesê word oor die lug, dat die mense moet saam staan, moet by wees by ons 2 Suid-Afrikaanse nooiens. En dit is wat gebeur het.
The United States to win the coveted trophy. Brenda and Pat played magnificently in front of a jubilant home crowd, and they didn't disappoint their supporters.
Maar weer is het Brenda Kirk en Pat Pretorius wat die punt wen. The South African girls are in fine form and clinch the set and the match, 6-1, 7-5.
En die 2 Suid-Afrikaners, Brenda Kirk en Pat Pretorius, die lug in opgevloeg het as het ware. Al 4 voet van die grond af, hande omhoog in hierdie oorwinningssprong.
Yes, I can remember it very clearly. We went up the one side, I think it was the south side, to serve during that second set. It was getting very tight. And a certain section of the crowd went absolutely bananas. And that was exciting. And we actually had to tell them, please now, don't just be quiet, hang on a bit.
That was a day that I'll never forget the rest of my life.
Hewitt and McMillan were South Africa's most successful doubles pair ever, and surely one of the most formidable combinations in world tennis over a long period. Between 1967 and 1979, they won 6 South African doubles titles. In 1967, Hewitt and McMillan became the first South African pair to win a doubles title at Wimbledon, after beating the powerful Australian combination of Roy Emerson and Ken Fletcher in 3 sets. In 1972, they won their second Wimbledon title, beating the Americans Stan Smith and Eric Van Dillen in 3 sets. In the same year, the South African duo also went on to win the French Open doubles title. In 77, Hewitt and McMillan won the US Open doubles title at Forest Hills, and a year later they went on to win their 3rd Wimbledon doubles title after beating John McEnroe and Peter Fleming of the United States.
And always thought of him as a very fine doubles player, but he had a partner in Keith Deepram, and I had a series of partners because I had left Australia. I had moved out to South Africa to live and had already been married, and I needed a partner, and the SATU said that they'd like to see Fru and I play together on the circuit just to build up a doubles combination for Davis Cup, not for tournaments. But I think if you ever were lucky enough to win Wimbledon, 100 times, I think the 100th would be just as fantastic as the first one.
Ons is terug met nog tennis net hierna.
'n Paar maande gelede kon die gemiddelde Suid-Afrikaner nie 'n nuwe motor bekostig nie. Dinge verander. Om die land se mees sinvolle motor werklik bekombaar te maak, het ons nou planne vanaf R450 per maand. Of geen depositotransaksies vir goedgekeurde klante. Of finansiële pakkette spesifiek vir jou beplan. Gesels met ons voor die geld opraak.
To take part in competitions internationally because of political pressure. The Springboks, with Hewitt, McMillan, Drysdale and Ray Moore forming the nucleus of the team, nevertheless fared brilliantly under very trying circumstances. 1974 was a memorable year for South Africa in the Davis Cup. In the first round, we beat Brazil in Montevideo 5-0. In the second round, the Springboks won 5-0 against Ecuador in Guayaquil. They took the third round against Argentina by default and then beat Chile 3-2 in Bogota in the final round. South Africa went on to win the interzone final, defeating Italy 4-1 at Ellis Park. Hewitt beat Zuccarelli in 5 sets and Moore defeated Adriano Panatta in 4 sets. In the doubles, Hewitt and McMillan beat Panatta and Bertolucci in 4 sets to clinch the title. Panatta then beat Hewitt in 3 sets, but Moore defeated Zuccarelli in 3 sets. South Africa's victory secured their position in the zone final. The Springboks beat Colombia at Bogota 3-2. This meant that South Africa was to play India in the final. India eventually pulled out for political reasons, and South Africa won the Davis Cup for the first time, becoming only the 5th nation to win this prestigious cup. From the mid-70s, the world rapidly began to isolate South Africa more and more. It became increasingly difficult to participate in team competitions and even more of a problem to get world stars to come and play in South Africa. In 1989, Christo van Rensburg became the first South African to win the title since Cliff Drysdale triumphed in 1965. And the ladies of the South African circuit? During the late 70s, Boshoff and Capers had many thrilling battles in the absence of world competition. Capers won the women's singles title in 76, 78 and 79, and Boshoff took the honors in 77. Boshoff also won the United States doubles title in 1976 with Ilana Kloss, and Kloss won the French mixed doubles title with Kim Warwick of Australia. In 1972, Ilana won the junior singles title at Wimbledon. In 1978, Marise Kruger reached the quarterfinals of the singles and lost to Martina Navratilova at Wimbledon. There were no women's singles championships played in 1982 and in 83, and in 84, Chris Evert walked off with the South African title after facing only mild competition. To help fight isolation and to keep the game going in South Africa, certain new events were staged from the 70s. The South African Closed Championships were introduced in 1970 for South African men and women only. In 1975, South African tennis decided to step out of the Davis Cup. The Standard Bank Cup was introduced and was a great boost for South African tennis. It brought international tennis back to South Africa and gave our players the chance to receive Springbok colours. The tournament was played in 1979 for the first time, and South Africa beat Spain. In 1980, South Africa beat America 4-3. In 1981, this was repeated with a 3-2 victory. In 1982, America, Spain, and Britain competed, and America won. In 1983, the tournament was played in Cape Town and Durban, with America, Spain, and Italy participating. America won the tournament for the 2nd consecutive year. In 1984, the competing teams were America, Australasia, an international team, as well as South Africa, and again, the Americans won. Israel took part for the first time in 1986, with America and South Africa to the other two teams, and Israel walked away with a Standard Bank Cup. In 1987, Israel again took part, with Paraguay competing for the first time. Again, Israel took home the cup. Die Philips Meesters toernooi is in 1977 vir die eerste keer gespeel en het die platform vir manstennis in Suid-Afrika gevorm. In 1979 is die Nashua Beker kompetisie vir die eerste keer ingestel en het dit aan onder 23 manspelers die geleentheid gebied om vir Suid-Afrika teen Amerika te speel. Junior springbokklere is vir die geleentheid toegeken. Vandat PDB Spence Wimbledon in 1927 gewen het en Sturgis en Summers in 1949, het Suid-Afrika verrassende suksesse in die gemengde dubbelspel in al die groot toernooie behaal, veral op Wimbledon in die laat 70er jare en vroeë 80s. In 1977 het Hewitt en Stevens die gemengde dubbelspel op Wimbledon gewen nadat hulle in 3 stelle afgereken het met McMillan en Betty Stooffer van Nederland. McMillan en Stooffer het later die jaar die Amerikaanse oopentitel verower. In 1978 wen McMillan en Stooffer op Wimbledon nadat hulle Ray Ruffles en Billie Jean King in die eindstryd geklop het in 2 stelle. Hulle het ook later in die jaar hulle Amerikaanse oopentitel behou. Die volgende jaar stap Hewitt en Stevens weer met die Wimbledon-titel weg, nadat hulle McMillan en Stooffer in 2 stelle in die eindstryd geklop het. In die 80s word Suid-Afrika se naam deurgaans hoog gehou in die tenniswêreld. In 1981 wen Ross Fairbank en Tanya Harford die Amerikaanse open dubbelspeltitel. Stevens haal die kwart-eindronde van die enkelspel op Wimbledon, maar verloor teen Tracy Austin. Toe kom die boerseun van Pongola op die toneel. Johan Kriek wen in 1981 en 82 die Australiese open enkelspeltitel. En in 82 is hy 5de gekeur op Wimbledon en dring hy deur tot die kwart-eindronde. Hy verloor in 4 stelle teen John McEnroe. En in 1983 wen hy as Amerikaanse burger die Suid-Afrikaanse open enkelspeltitel. Dan was daar Kevin Curran, lank, lenig en 'n man met 'n groot afslaan. In 1983 klop hy die eerste gekeurde Jimmy Connors in die Wimbledon se kwart-eindstryd. Hy verloor net teen die Nieu-Seelander Chris Lewis in die halfeindronde met die telling in die finale stel 8-6. In 1985 is Curran, nou Amerikaanse burger, 8ste gekeur op Wimbledon. Hy verslaan die eerste gekeurde McEnroe in 4 stelle in die kwart-eindstryd. Die 3de gekeurde Connors in 3 stelle in die halfeind om deur te dring tot die eindstryd waar hy teen Boris Becker te staan kom.
At Wimbledon, I shouldn't have lost 85. I destroyed and played extremely well against the top guys in the world. I ended up losing to a guy, his first shot at Wimbledon. Okay, he's come out and proven to be one of the best. But at that time, at that stage, I should have won that.
In 1983 vaar ons meisies die beste in jare op Wimbledon. Yvonne Vermaak dring deur tot die halfeindronde, maar verloor in 2 stelle teen die kragtige Navratilova nadat Jennifer Mandel in die kwart-eindronde uitgeskakel is. In 1985 duik die naam van 'n jong man van Uitenhage gereeld in wêreldtennis op. Christo van Rensburg en Paul Annacone wen die Australiese open dubbelspelkampioenskap en in 1989 word Christo die eerste Suid-Afrikaner sedert Cliff Drysdale in 1965 om die SA Open te wen. Donnie Visser and Peter Aldridge were one of several fine doubles pairs over the last few years. Stefan Kruger, Neil Broad and Gary Miller have all distinguished themselves as fine combinations. Visser and Aldridge won several top tournaments over the past few years and secured the #1 world rating. They were also voted Sportsman of the Year in 1990 by the Sports Writers Society. It was indeed a great year for the South Africans. Early on, they won the Australian doubles title, beating Connell and Mishibata after an amazing quarter-final win over Davis and Van 't Hoff. The score was 23-21 in the final set. After defeating Annacone and Wheaton in the final, Visser and Aldridge also won the 1990 US Open doubles title. And at Wimbledon that year, they lost 7-6, 7-6, 7-6 to Leach and Pugh in the final.
Van die baan af kom ons goed oor die weg en daar was wederzijdse respek en ek dink ons tipe van spel wat ons speel pas goed in by mekaar en by dubbels en dit is maar net iets wat van die begin af geklik het.
When one looks at the future, several up-and-coming young players paint a positive picture. Wayne Ferreira, who won the 1990 SA Open and closed tournaments as a 19-year-old and broke into the top 80. Amanda Kutzer, who at a very young age won the South African Championships and is doing well overseas. Elna Reinach is still doing very well internationally, while Marcus Androska, Grant Stafford and Marion de Swat are bright stars of the future.
We promoted the first Davis Cup match that we actually ended up winning the title, but we did the semi-final at Ellis Park, the classic one where Panatta and Zuccarelli lost to Hewitt, Moore and McMillan. And that was a real high, and it followed with the South African Open that year, and our first seed was Jimmy Connors, and our first seed in the ladies, because we had the ladies and men at the same time those years, same as Wimbledon, was Chrissy Evett, and they both won the title, and they got engaged that year, so it was a bit of a high, no doubt. And we started a whole series of tournaments to blood our younger players, like the Phillips Challenge, the Phillips Masters, the Nashua Cup. For the women, we did the Sari magazine series, we did the Sustagen Bowl, just to keep the game alive here and make sure that the public didn't leave us and not watch the tennis when we did bring it here.
But what is the future of South African tennis regarding readmittance to international competitions, events, the staging of tournaments in a fast-changing environment?
We will be focusing very much on development of the youngsters and the townships all over the country in terms of opportunities, coaching, and also in terms of facilities. But not only that, we are looking to open up internationally, and ultimately we will have international competitions in this country, both the ATP type events with point scoring with big players, and also Davis Cup, Federation Cup and Olympic Games overseas. So I think we are set for a boom in tennis, both at grassroots level and at international level.
In the centenary here of South African tennis, our celebrations may just receive that extra glass of champagne with the start of our readmittance to the international arena. Let's toast the future and remember the heroes and heroines of yesteryear like Raymond Spence, Heine Miller, Sturgis, Summers, Hewitt, McMillan and many, many other greats who did South African tennis proud in the international arena. May the future hold as many great moments for our tennis as those experienced in the years gone by.